Okay, so that was interesting. Sorry about that. Not sure what happened on that front. I was working in flow state, and everything just cut out. So yes, I do apologize on that. Maybe everybody left. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, that was a little odd. But anyways, what I want to say is flow state ended up being pretty interesting to try. For some reason, yeah, it just totally shut off. So we will see. If this is kind of like the second stream, I guess. I don't know if you can pick up where it left off, but I may have to say part 2 or something like that. So yeah, let me see what's going on with this whole thing. So it's about 11:45. I'm going to go ahead and transition to the next step, which is an interview with some guests. So I will go ahead and bring them in. Okay. Hi. So I crashed out, and right now, like, you're not on the stream, but I'm going to transition to bring you in. I'm just going to have to do it live real quick. So just if you hang out 1 second, I'll bring you in on the page. Okay. So I'm going to hide myself. All right. Okay, folks. And I think we can get this changed real quick. So if we do window capture and we do boy, this is odd. Okay. All right. And then we will do all the fancy stuff. Everybody gets to see the live tricks that I have here up my sleeve as the streamer. Now, the thing about streaming is you have to be like flexible to these kind of uncertainties. And that's fine with me. I'm not terribly concerned about it. Okay, so let me just go ahead and move you over here onto the old multi-outputs. And we will turn this music down a little bit. And all right, so we have, I want to refresh the chat. I think we're good. Okay, yeah, I had to do a little finagling right on the fly, folks, so sorry about that. And we got 4 viewers back. Thanks for coming back. If you're just joining us, we had a little crash on my end. Maybe it's in, what do you think, Luke and Sash? It's on theme with this week's topic, I guess, right?
Yes, things that will terrify you when it comes to the professional writing program.
Yes, that, you know, a streamer's terror is when things utterly crash. So I was working in flow state, and yeah, the thing just kind of interrupted my flow, I guess. That was a little irritating. But I would like to transition, like I was saying, to introducing 2 editors with Existere. It's a journal of arts and literature. And Luke and Sash, I know you can't really see this on the screen, but behind me we've got the Existere sort of page and stuff like that behind me. But we're going to talk about, as I was saying at the beginning of the stream before we crashed, really what it's like to work as an editor, and then that one key question in line with this week's theme, which is how do you submit things without feeling sort of terrified, right? It's a hard thing to do. I'm sure you've had those questions from your actual submitters to say, you know, what is it like to put this out into the world, or why should I submit, and things like that. So we'll talk about that for a little bit. But first, I would like you to introduce yourselves, if you don't mind, and tell us a bit about what you do and things like that.
All right. So I'm Luke. I'm the senior editor of nonfiction at Existere. This is Sash. You didn't really seem to want to jump in there, so I'll.
I thought, okay. My name is Sashoy-Wilson. I am the senior editor for fiction. I'm a 3rd-year professional writing student, and happy to be here.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, more or less what we do at Existere. We're a literary journal. As Rich said, we publish works of nonfiction, fiction. We also publish poetry and artworks twice a year. We accept submissions from all around the world, but we mostly try to focus on stuff that's related to Canada or is by Canadian authors. It's not a rule, it's just sort of it's kind of our thing. I'm getting a pop-up. Yeah, I'm blanking all of a sudden.
It's a terrifying virus that's spreading between.
Yes, no, there's a terrifying thing is going on a live stream and not forgetting what you wanted to say. But yeah, no, there's really not much more to it than that in terms of what we do from the outside. Like what we do on the inside is quite fascinating, the whole editing process.
Well, we don't actually edit. So senior editors review the submissions and we create either a short or long list to send to our juniors. And then we meet with our juniors once a week to go over the submissions, the pieces that we've sent them. So depending on which group you're in, you may, the amount of submissions that you get from your senior editors vary. So for fiction, we get a lot of fiction submissions. So my juniors are reading about 6 to 7 pieces a week. They have a report that they fill out and a criteria that Existere uses when we're evaluating submissions. We kind of have that process. They vote on the pieces that they feel strongly about and they craft arguments as to why that piece should be published. And then after that, the senior editors will send it up to the senior team. And so the senior editors like Luke, myself, senior editors for art, poetry, will evaluate the pieces that were accepted by our juniors along with the faculty advisors. And then we kind of decide, we vote on whether the piece is strong enough to be published. So it's like a 3-step process, really.
Yeah, kind of a convoluted one too.
And I think that's what's interesting about the journal. How many folks do you have on staff? Can you remind me? How many are?
I believe it's like 27, 28 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it literally takes a village to get this, journal out every year, right? It seems like.
Yeah, it really does. But it's very important for us to have that many voices involved in the editing process because were it just like me, Sash, and a few other senior editors, the submissions that ended up going through would be very much colored by our personal preferences. Whereas by having as many voices involved as possible, we can try and get closer to something that's a more general or even objective, if such a thing is possible, like list of submissions we want to actually publish.
Yeah. And I know like at a lot of journals, you'll have the kind of managing editor who looks at it and then decides, like screens it first before it goes out to reviewers. So it seems really in line with a lot of publishing you hear, like in academic spaces as well, for even rhetoric and composition journals that I submit to.
Yeah, that's the best part about Existere is that it's kind of mimicking an organization, a publishing house in the real world, but you're doing it within the confines of school. And you have the faculty advisors who are really there to advise. They don't really input much or, lead and direct. So the senior editors are really leading our juniors and each other as we publish. So it's very nice because by the end, when it comes to publishing, we'll write an editor's note and it's kind of the direction that of the pieces that were accepted and how the process was and what the story that's being told is for the journal. So it's very nice.
Excellent. And now, is this because of the pandemic? I know it's been hard to do with releases and stuff like that. Do you have print and digital versions of this? Or have you gone exclusively digital at this point?
So when Existere moved into the writing department in 2019, we moved back to releasing in print. But because of the pandemic, we only managed to get, I think, 1 issue, maybe 2. I mean, I wasn't there for the first one, out in print before we had to move back to digital only because of restrictions. With the pandemic, people basically not being able to go to the York bookstore didn't really help.
We've talked about moving forward doing print and digital. Though COVID has constrained us to just digital, publishing digitally, it's been good because we've been able to publish more works. We didn't have to worry so much about the page count. So that's been nice.
It's also allowed our team to do some interesting things with like how we put the issue together, like having linked pages throughout it that allow you to jump around the issue very quickly, which is quite convenient.
Interesting.
Yes, lots of design processes.
Yeah. Wow.
Which, I was going to say that really ties into the other side of what Existere is all about, is that as much as we are an actual literary journal, we're also a learning experience for students at York, and especially in the writing department, though some of us, like Sash, came from other places originally. Like, as you work with Existere as a editor, junior, senior, whatever, you do end up learning a lot about both the field and writing itself, and you end up having to do things like adapt to suddenly not being able to print.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of decisions did you have to make going into that thing? Because again, like, I mean, you just see, I'm just trying to like really ride this terror idea, but like that could be like a really hard thing to grapple with, right? Like when you're saying, okay, suddenly we don't have like a print space because we can't distribute it. We can't have our release parties and things like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so how did you, sorry, I mean, what can you speak from your experience to making that adaptation and what you felt like at that time?
So I mean, it was really scary because at least if it's in print and in the bookstore, then we can put up flyers, students, there's traffic, students can see it, right? Whereas doing digitally now, we have to think about marketing to students. They're not coming to campus, so how do we reach out to everyone? And then from the building of the actual journal itself is we had to really think about user experience. So like Luke had said, we found a way to link from so you have the table of contents, from the table of contents jump straight to either the author bio if you click the author's name, or either the piece when you click the piece's name. And then we have a little thing in the corner, in the left hand corner at the top, that takes you back to the previous page or to the table of contents. So we kind of had to think about what colors would look well online if people downloaded it as a PDF, how they would navigate through a PDF. So a lot of things that we didn't really think about before when it was being printed, and now that it's being printed digitally, that we had to adapt to.
Yeah, that's
it also,
go ahead, Luke.
I was just saying, it also became an interesting question of content, because very quickly after the pandemic started, probably about half of the stories we got, at least in nonfiction, where both of us were at the time, became about the pandemic. So it became sort of a question of how much of this do people need to want to read? Like, is it in our interest to, or is it in the interest of the readers to use like all of this content? Is it going to get too bleak almost?
Yeah,
so it presented some interesting quandaries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about accessibility too, with like the PDFs that you're distributing have to be readable. There's a lot of layers that go into digital publishing. So, I mean, congrats to you all, to say the least, for getting this whole thing off the ground. While you're trying to work remote and think about this sort of layers that just don't often come up. When you're doing, like, I think I came to one of the releases my first year, and there was a reading, and I picked up the journal at the very end, and usually that's it. But you've also been doing other things too, if I understand right, about like your digital presence with Existere has sort of stepped up in the last year, if I understand correctly, right? Like in terms of outside of the publication itself, like social media and things like that.
Yes, Paula. So Sean helped put the thing the journal together, and Paula does the social media. She's been doing a wonderful job on Instagram, Twitter, just trying to get the word out there. I know that when we get new juniors, we tell them about the social platforms that we have so that they go and follow, and kind of trickle down that way, at least within the professional writing program. We also, have a lot of classes with our fellow peers that are either part of Existere or soon will be. So that's how we get it. But yeah, Paula's very good with the social media. I think she's revamped the Instagram
Just plugging our
Page.
Insta and Twitter in the chat.
Oh, nice. Yeah, please do. That'd be great. That's great. And we have a question from the audience, actually. Does Existere take in submissions from York students? And some other folks are wondering about the same.
So students can submit to Existere. We usually get, pieces from professionals who have already published, but you definitely can. You won't be a part of the process when we are reviewing your piece, but I would personally suggest to maybe submit to Inventio instead first, because it is a student-run journal. It's a webzine. It's a student journal for students, by students. So your work is more likely to get submitted and accepted there than Existere. And then maybe if it's submitted there, then you can do Existere later down the road. But yes.
Not the same piece, though.
No, not the same piece.
We only publish new works.
Okay. Yes, that's the hard thing too about submitting is finding a home. So Inventio is. Let's look that up. That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up because I should probably bring in those folks too to talk with them sometime about.
I was actually going to ask you because I'm the writing and publishing director of Inventio.
Whoa! How about that?
You can just
okay.
Bring Sash in again.
Yes. Okay. We like return guests, so that's great. Okay, so I'll leave that up there, and maybe I can put it in the chat as well. So I got a couple more questions for you all, and maybe we can kind of move over closely to the theme of this week's stream. That sending out works to journals can be terrifying. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. Maybe like you all feel the same way. Before you hit that submit button, right? Or you use Submittable or something like that. What recommendations do you have for writers who might be hesitant to submit to a journal like Existere? Or, Sash, if you want also to speak to Inventio as well, like just general advice, especially from the editor's perspective.
I mean, there's really nothing to lose, at least with Existere. I know some fancy journals, like maybe they even make you pay to submit. I'm not sure. We don't. There's basically no potential for loss. You're not going to lose anything if you don't get accepted. And if you do get accepted, that means you've been published and you're getting a little bit of money. As far as the fear aspect of it goes, something I was told when I was in acting school was that I drop that into every conversation, was that when you're auditioning for a part, and this is pretty much the same thing, you really have to care about it in the moment, which in this case would be when you're writing, when you're editing, when you're proofreading. But then once it's submitted, once it's out there, you can't keep thinking about it because it's already out of your hands. And I think the key there is just to keep moving forward. And once something has been submitted, like it's not something you need to worry about anymore.
I definitely think, like Luke said, editing and proofreading your work will go a long way to building your confidence before you even submit it. We as editors know that it's very nerve-wracking to put a piece of yourself out there to get people to critique and evaluate it. So we're very mindful of that, and grateful that you chose our journal to submit to. Whether your piece gets accepted or not, that itself is an honor because you're putting pieces of yourself out there. So we make sure we keep that in mind when we're evaluating and critiquing your work. And sometimes we even have productive feedback that we can send back to the author and say, hey, we really like this piece, but there are a few issues here and there with grammar, structure, all of that stuff. Do you mind fixing it? And if you fix it, then we can publish it, kind of thing. So the process itself may be scary, but there are people on the other side as well, and so we know that it's not an easy thing.
Well, and I found something really helpful for me when I'm writing is to look at what the criteria is, if it's available on your website or on the journal's website. And so I was grateful that Luke and you provided the submission criteria that kind of the editors will use. So If it's okay, I'd love to show it up on the screen if that's
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, like when you're submitting to things, I think that to reduce literally some of that terror sometimes is to actually look at the submission criteria. So you have this really clear list that you can kind of go through, and the first one I'm looking at is like level of the sentence, so strong diction, flow, without interruptions, like we saw earlier in this stream, accurate spelling, so unless they're like sort of purposeful errors like you might see in poetry, it seems like, strong images, emotions, reactions for the reader. You've got content and subject matter. I mean, tell me about this idea of like the heart of the piece should be easily identifiable. So what this piece is trying to tell us should be ultimately clear. I mean, this is kind of the when you're having these editor meetings, are these the kind of things you're using as discussion points? Obviously, I don't want to have like we can't be a fly on the wall in the room, but if you could kind of narrate for us, like, is this what you sort of use when you're trying to decide at the editorial level?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Just the other day, we had a senior meeting where we had quite a bit of discussion about the hearts of various pieces. Because, like, after you reach a certain point, if a writer has strong diction, if their level of sentence is good, you still have to ascertain what the message of the story is, what they're trying to achieve through it, and how well the content and style fuse to actually achieve that goal. So something that quite often comes up is whether or not we can find the message of a story within the text, how easy it is to identify, and also, whether or not it's trying to do something that is maybe unique or that has some sort of social impact in a positive way. Because if you scroll down, you'll see that that's also one of the things we look at.
Okay. And yeah, so you've got, impact is such an interesting thing. I mean, may trigger important life experiences, feelings of happiness, sadness, justice, may speak to some form of social justice, inspire the reader to take action, make them want to do something. It's interesting. We talk about a lot about it in my classes. What's this thing doing for the reader? What should it do, rather than just what it's saying? And that seems really interesting. Now, like in terms of this list, are these sort of hierarchical? Like, or are they sort of just, I guess, themes or areas you look at? Like, where do you put more of your emphasis on? I guess in the various stages.
I would say, they're not necessarily hierarchical in a sense. The heart of the piece is pretty important, but also because it's, professional writing program that's hosting the Existere, level of sentence is, very important to us as well. There have been times where at least one of the submissions that we got last year was written from inside of a prison. And so the author wasn't able to, there were spelling and grammar errors, but we couldn't go back to that person and say, hey, can you fix this? Because what they had written gave us an inside peek as to what it was like for COVID inside that particular prison. And so we discussed, it's the story is there, the message is there, and it's impactful. Do we print it with all of these grammar issues? And at the end of the day, we decided that we would print it because it was something that we felt needed to be said and read. So it really depends. Yeah,
like it's not so much a hierarchy as it's kind of like a four-legged chair. If you take one leg out, you still got a three-legged chair. That can stand up too. If something is very incredible, like that story was in all other instances, then it can get away with not having the most incredible level of sentence. Because really, we don't expect every submission that we print to be absolutely perfect. We're not. Otherwise, we would never print anything. Humans are flawed.
That's a really interesting metaphor for submitting, like, because sometimes you could explain why your chair has only three legs, or you made these intentional decisions. I think when I was working on some literary journals similar to this in my undergrad, we would usually look at like cover letters as well, just to give some context. So do people submit those? Is that still part of like the expectation, at least in these submissions?
They do submit.
We don't read them.
We do submit. We don't read them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I will read them, but I definitely won't send it to my juniors to read, just because I don't want them to be influenced by what the author wants them to get away from the piece. The piece should be able to stand on its own without the author saying, this is what I intended, this is what it's for, this is what I meant. So we don't read them.
And for me, with nonfiction, the biography of the author quite often comes through in the work itself. So I really don't need like that on top of it. It's not necessary.
Yeah. Okay. So with the prisoner example, you knew that they were. I haven't read the issue. I'm sorry, but you knew that they were writing from that perspective.
Yes. It was a nonfiction piece of work. So
the prisoner one was kind of an interesting case because they didn't have the opportunity to really tell us anything about themselves, so we actually had to look at them up and try and figure out who they were based on their name and the prison they said they were in, to try and like verify it, because it was so important to us that it was authentic.
That's very important too. We have to sometimes, when we get pieces that show a different culture or experience, we do verify whether or not that is, especially if it's nonfiction, if that is theirs, because it's very important to us that they're not telling someone else's story and passing it off as theirs.
Which issue was that? Was it the most recent one?
No, it was 40.1, I believe.
40.1. Okay.
So
I was trying to see if I could. Fall winter. Okay. Yeah. I'm clicking on the link now. Unfortunately, I can't see the issue TOC or anything like that. But yeah, if you want to let us know in the chat or something about that author, that sounds like a really fascinating piece to check out for it. So, I mean, this is great information. Thank you I hope this is helpful for for viewers and listeners, that what it's like to think about your work from the eyes and kind of senses of the editors. So, as I understand it, you meet regularly, right? Fridays, typically, throughout the year, and sort of discuss.
We meet every Friday at the senior editors meet up at 4 to discuss senior editor things, and then the junior editors come in at 4:30 for the main meetings, and they last until about 6.
Okay. Excellent.
And sometimes Marlene keeps us there until like 7:30, but that's just the seniors.
Yeah. Excellent. I should mention that my colleague Marlene Bernholtz is your faculty advisor, so she's doing a wonderful job. And as are you all together. It seems like a really well ran team. And one thing that you mentioned in the video that's also available on our YouTube page is that you do a lot of rotation on the editorial team, just to give everybody those different experiences. So it's about a 1-year cycle, correct?
Yes.
Roughly.
So junior editors can be junior editors for as long as they want, really. You can cycle through the different. So I went in as a junior editor last year, but I originally applied for fiction, but I was put into nonfiction, and I found I learned a lot. And so that was it was very impactful for me to be out of my comfort zone of fiction and go into nonfiction. So you can circulate as a junior editor into the different streams, even if you don't have experience, because that's what your senior editor is there for. They're there to lead, help facilitate, and guide you. And then so this year, as the senior editor for fiction, I won't be a senior editor next year. I can be a consulting editor. And then I can always go back to being a junior editor for, poetry or art or something if I'd like to. But yes, 1 year for senior editors at least.
Excellent. Well, big congratulations to you all on releasing an issue for Spring Summer Volume 40, Issue 2. I before the crash had some, had it all pulled up, was going to walk through the issue and things like that. But unfortunately, I'm having a little bit of an issue accessing everything. So yeah, we'll have to have this amazing picture up here of the wolf on screen. And do you want to tell us a little bit about what's in this most recent issue, or things you're excited about? I'm sure you're excited about all of it, but anything you want to highlight particularly as people would maybe go check out where to get the latest issue and so forth.
You mean like particular pieces from the
Yeah,
issue?
one you're excited about by a particular author.
All right. So the piece I was most excited about with this one is actually a fiction piece that I had never read until it was published, because I wasn't a senior editor last year.
Sure.
Which is what was it called again? It's called Ghost Note. It's I believe the first story in the issue, which is by an author named Corey McCullough. It's about an old man who was a lifelong musician and has now lost the ability to play, and he only wants desperately to play his guitar again. And I'm not going to say any more about the plot of it, because what makes it so incredible to me is how the author unveils elements about the characters slowly over the course of the short story. And each time an element is revealed, you kind of have to look back at what you've already read and think about it in a new context now that it's been recontextualized by what you've learned. And it makes the impact of the story quite impactful. I couldn't think of a better word.
Right on line with your criteria. So that's great. Sash, do you want to mention one?
I'm gonna stick with the prisoner one for the last issue, so that at least you have both issues. It's called Reporting, a part of the conversation. So I think it's a two-parter, and we published both of them. So afterwards, I'll put in the comments what the title is and where you can get that last issue.
Excellent. All right, so I'll leave you with this. We're just a little bit over to 12:15. I need a writing prompt from one of you for this most dangerous writing app, which seems like a fun sort of marathon writing process. But right now I've got these pulled up on my screen. So the most dangerous app, as I was sort of mentioning as part of these terrifying prompts, is if you stop writing, all the progress will be lost. So I wonder if anybody who submits Existere would actually use something like this, or maybe just to ideate. But yeah, prompt-wise, what do you think would be kind of terrifying to work with, just to put you on the spot, because that's what I do.
Tell a story from your own life where you come out as the bad guy.
Tell a story.
I can tell you,
okay.
as I've been working with nonfiction for 2 years, that's incredibly rare. No one seems to be able to write it. Sometimes it happens accidentally, but very few people do it on purpose, where they actually write something from their own perspective that puts them in a negative light.
Okay, so not so much the success story, things like that. Look at this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're seeing it on the screen, it just dissipates. So we count to 5, just like flow state. So you have to continue. I'm gonna copy paste this just to see, because it's just gone. See, now I can't do it. And it's like
you don't even need a scary prompt. The app itself is terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't even copy paste either. Tell a story about the end, where at the end you come out as the bad guy. Is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah, well, like, not necessarily where you come out looking like a super villain, but just stories where people present a nuanced depiction of themselves as a real person, and that's always incredibly valuable with a nonfiction piece.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I'm gonna have to think on that one. I think
that needs a level of self-awareness and reflection.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Some twists and turns. Easy. We'll say, "Ooh, yeah, okay, I've got 19 words, but this may die because I want to just see how it goes." So this has been great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to mention about the journal before we wrap up on the call?
Well, you can purchase every edition of Existere at the Yorkview bookstore.
Excellent. Yes, that's exactly where I did mine. Now, so when I got mine, and I think that's why I'm having a rendering issue, you could pick it up there, but also, do you have to say that it's a PDF, or is it automatically delivered to you as a PDF?
I'm not quite sure. There should be a separate, like when you purchase it, you should be able to purchase it separately through print and separately through, digital. And then I believe it was initially password protected, so you would need to make that distinction so that you have access to it. But I'm not sure. Luke, do you know?
To be honest, I'm sorry to say that I do not. I'm
That's
actually
okay.
currently buying it again, just so that I can see how this works.
And it's not
Yeah.
super expensive, so definitely buy it.
Yes, do, and it supports the editors and the authors and all that sort of stuff. So, thanks again so much, and
It supports
we'll
the
have to have you
authors.
back at some point. Yeah,
Perfect. Thank
we're gonna
you.
be here all you. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hang up on the call, and
All right.
then we'll finish up then. So yeah, we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thanks for having
Okay.
us. Bye.
Okay, so we're good to there. Doing the double screens. We're gonna. There we go. Okay. You all are getting to see all the behind the scenes things that happen here on the stream. All right. So we've got such a nice chat with those folks at Existere, Luke and Sash, just speaking about what it takes to, make a journal happen. It can be quite terrifying, to say the least. So let's look at just a few more prompts to wrap up. I'm not going to actually cut to a break just because, well, we had that little issue at the beginning, and that's okay. That's why we're sort of adapting as we go. We looked at the most dangerous writing app. Let's look at Write or Die 2. Yes, Luke, thanks. You're on the calls. You're on the chat as well. So this is the last thing I want to show everybody before we wrap up. It is called Write or Die, and it is a pretty interesting thing to work with. Let me just get this all situated, and we'll be good to go. So, Write or Die is basically a little more nuanced, but what it allows you to do is write with certain conditions. I'm going to turn the music up just slightly so I can hear it. And what's interesting about this one is if you stop writing, it'll usually generate like really terrible or alarming sounds and things like that. So I'll just show you what this looks like, and we'll go for 5 minutes. I really like that idea about being lost in the woods, but I've simply lost that from flow state. So we'll just try this one and see what it sounds like. So let's just say we'll go for 200 words. We'll see if we can make that. And Dia and Luke and Jason and Ria, I didn't say hi, or Raya, I didn't say hi earlier. If anyone has contributions to this kind of preview of A Dark and Stormy Night, feel free to enjoy. This is one of those typical scenes that we kind of set in more horror story situations. So let's just say it was a dark and stormy night. What happens from there? Maybe I'll just continue. I'm gonna go second. I'm gonna go. We'll go second person perspective. You wake up. Staring up at the sky in the middle of the woods. Worry about grammar later. Yeah, it's very immediate, right? So again, if we stop writing, what's going to happen here? So we get those alarms. Not sure I'm about that, but I wanted to get something a little more alarming. So let's see what this sounds like. We went alarming, went horrible, images of creepy critters or a grumpy cat. Very interesting. We'll go startle mode, and we'll just see what this looks like. And at least lets me copy paste. Yes, it is loud. Okay, so I've stopped completely. Not too bad. I want to look at Write or Die 3 too, because this is one that's a little more interesting to try out. Write or Die 3. I had that before, and before I lost everything. I may have to like do it just a bit longer so I don't disappoint. Okay, so there's like a lot of stuff you get on this opening page, but when you say you're ready, it actually goes. So there's a warning, consequence. We're going to do a grace period of 5 seconds. I'm really just trying to invoke all the terror. That means I have to do 100 words a minute, 500 words. We will see. Let's try it out. Ready, go. Okay. All right, so I pasted it in. Let's just say you don't really know where you are. As you get up, you reach into your pocket and find a folded sheet of paper. I'm trying to get like terrifying technical communications. Yes. RIP headphone users. Let's see what happens if I just stop. Yeah. Oh, that's awful. Okay. So I'll just turn this down a little bit so we don't get... Well, at least in that case, like you don't lose the writing. So that's kind of nice. It contains a series of handwritten instructions. This is what I was trying to do before I crashed. So walk until you can't anymore. All right, Dia, what should we say? What should we say? What's the second step? Number 2. Before this screeching sound haunts us again. Ugh. I'll make it go away. Luke, what should we say? Hey, I've got my headphones on too, so it's a little rough. Yes. Don't turn back. Don't turn around. Don't make me sing Ace of Base. Consult the great hippopotamus in the sky. I'm going to end it like that. It's just like, yeah. Okay, how do we get there? Don't turn back. That's the rule. You can't turn around. I'm loving this. I'm gonna put some music back on so we can like counterbalance that. Oh, okay. Let's see. We'll just say don't turn on your flashlight. How about that? Okay, so what's the between steps 3 and 5? I don't know. We'll just say you can't use your phone. Okay, so we're walking. The instructions say, walk toward the sunrise until you can't anymore. Don't turn back. Don't turn around. Don't turn on your flashlight. You can't use your phone. If you hear a sound, nice. Okay. Finally consult the great hippopotamus in the sky. I think if I saw that, Carmen, I would probably be pretty terrified. So I'm going to let this pause, but I'll put it in the chat. Oh boy, that's so... I wrote 116 words in 5 minutes. Okay. So what do we think about that kind of approach? I mean, I could see it being good for ideation purposes. And I just put the whole story there. Oh, it won't let me put the whole thing on there. Darn. Okay, let's go back and take that out a little bit. Let's see if we can put this. Ah, you know what? I'm going to have to just kind of do it one by one. We'll see. That's good. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, and then we'll do the second. I just want you all to have this lovely piece we've put together. Ah, that's not going to work. I admit I'm not the most skilled at writing terror. Yes, and so... Yes, Luke saying, I'll stick to the assignment deadlines. Those are scary enough. Definitely they are. And any kind of deadline tends to be like that. The approach, yeah, I mean, I think like the most dangerous writing app is probably more my jam because you still lose. Well, I guess it's the same kind of thing. Like if you keep writing in this, it helps, but the consequences, you don't lose everything. It doesn't delete it. So it's kind of like, do you want utter loss like this, or do you want something that's kind of terrifying? You know, I guess which kind of terror do you prefer? That's the sort of challenge. Hard to say, definitely. Okay, so yeah, my apologies again on the little gaffe that we had with the beginning. I'm not sure what happened. I don't want to say that it was part of flow state. I could be. Maybe it was all intentional on my end. But that was the first time I've had my computer utterly crash during a stream. So, but we got through it. We had a nice chat with extra editors. We had a little bit of practice with these. Those are all linked in the stream description, so feel free to check those out. I would love to know on next stream sort of how it went for you, if you've tried any of those and so forth. And before I go, I want to pull up one thing. I'm just pulling up on my screen real quick so I can show you all. These are the planned sort of episodes that we have coming up that I'll announce to you all now, so you can get a preview of what's coming up. And if you know anybody who might be interested in coming up on the screen for the stream, barring any sort of future errors, let me know. I'm always open to that as well. So I'm going to pull these up so nice and big so we can see sort of what's coming up. But this is sort of what I was working through earlier today, thinking about some things that I know the streamers, folks who've been on, have been interested in, and certainly things that I've taught in the past that I think other folks might be interested in as well. So for November, we have a couple things coming up. Next week, we're going to talk about writing with sound. So if you're interested in thinking about how voice and things like that figure into your writing process, or you want to learn some kind of quick podcasting, audio editing technologies, that's what we'll cover. We'll mainly focus on open access technologies for that. Then writing with video and mobile technologies. So, you know, if you're thinking about making a video presentation along with your writing process or something like that, what are some ways you can get into, you know, video making? And again, it's just complementary to the writing process. So you maybe made a script. What are some ways that you can represent that through video means? And then because we'll kind of get near the ends of the term, which always goes so quickly for me, folks, We're going to talk about self-care in the writing process. So what can you do to take care of yourself while you're in the middle of these large essays, small essays, things like that? What are some things you do? We'll come in and talk about that. And then, again, following what I've done in the past for digital writing workshops, we'll look at moving writing from the page to the web. So how could you represent what you've written in a sort of web design that's effective and pretty easy, especially as an entry point to working on the web. And then for the last stream, I thought we'd do kind of some cozy vibes and winter writing prompts. So, there, as we sort of saw last week, there's software like A Place to Write, others that can kind of get you in those kind of scenes of writing that you can replicate online. But what are some other things out there we might entertain, especially as we kind of get into the winter months and the winter break and so forth? If there's anything else you want to see here on the stream, prompts, ideas, things like that, feel free to write me. You can write me on YouTube or leave a idea in the comments, but you can also use my email address if you like. It's just richshivner@yorku.ca. And let me know big things that are pressing in your classes that we just haven't covered in the stream. If we don't cover it this term, we'll certainly cover it next term, or we'll try to for the stream, since we're running next term as well. But other than that, thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for being flexible and for your patience during this week's prompts and so forth. So I hope these are useful for you as always, and I will see you next week. Okay.